Hello, does this work? It's working. All right. You can hear me okay? Everywhere? All right. Good to see you all. What's up, Jimmy? How's it going?
Good. So far, so good. I mean, it's only day 8.
Day 8, right. How many people made it to the New Year's thing? Right on. This is good, yeah, beginning of the year. It's like a fresh start, kind of. You guys sitting more? It's a great time to set that as a New Year's resolution. Take you to about February. But there's a lot of good meditating that happens between like January and mid-February. It's good.
Weight Watchers is up today, but it stopped.
Yeah. All right, should we sit? I suppose that's what we do here, huh? All right. Anybody here for the first time? Anybody like New Year's resolution? Right on. Start going to that meditation place. Good. So welcome. Come on in. We haven't even started yet. So I'll just say what I always say, which is just to remind everyone that, you know, this practice isn't about getting anywhere. Hi. It's not about achieving anything. All we're going to do is we're just going to sit for about 30 minutes. And it's actually time to take a break from all that. All the stuff you're trying to get and become and change, you could just put that all down. And for the next half hour, you can just be. And then when we're done, then you can pick all that stuff back up. It'll be right there, right where you left it. Promise. So instead, I kind of think of it often as the kind of our normal orientation often is that we're trying to kind of sort of tell ourselves a lot of stuff. There's a lot of information. We're like, dude, you should be like this, and you got to do this, and like, you know, I don't like this, more that, and don't forget to do this, and you know, you sort of go through your day taking a lot of marching orders from yourself. Would you say that's about right? You got a lot of opinions, like you're always getting these like memos from yourself, from your mind, like, you fucked up, do this better, do that, do more of this, do less of that. And so but the line of communication is kind of mostly going in that direction. We're mostly like lecturing to ourselves. I even made a joke the other day that, you know that term that's popular now, mansplaining? So we're all doing that, even the women. You're mansplaining to yourself, I'm telling you. If you listen closely, you're doing it too. And nobody likes it, by the way. No one likes being on the receiving end of that. Not even you. Hey, so for these 30 minutes where we sit, part of the idea is to actually flip that around. And what if we spent this half hour, instead of telling ourselves a bunch of stuff, what if we actually listened to how we feel? What if we listen and put ourselves in a kind of receptive state rather than a lecturing state? Does that make sense? So part of good listening is that you don't know what you're going to hear. Right? Like if I'm going to really listen to you, if I'm like, oh, I already know what you're going to say, I already even have my response, but let's go through the formality where you talk and I pretend to listen. right? So it's really about really not knowing. Like if I'm going to really listen, I need to be in a state where I'm open to learning something. I mean, I'm open to hearing something I don't already know. So when we sit and you tune into yourself and you bring your awareness to your body, I'll guide us through it. But you're going to bring your awareness to your body, you're going to feel the breath, you're going to sense what's happening for you. Let yourself really receive whatever is happening with some kindness and some compassion. Does that make sense? Okay, good. And then when you catch that internal mansplaining, just notice it. Just be like, oh yeah, there it is. You don't actually have to get mad at it. It's just a deep habit we all have. But just when you see that, like, oh yeah, there are those marching orders again. Just come back to your body. So with that in mind, find a comfortable posture. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. And just start by bringing your awareness to your body. And let yourself listen. Let yourself not know what you're going to find. Let go of any ideas about how you think it should be or how you're supposed to be. And just become aware of how is it? What's it like in there? Remember, there's no right or wrong. It's not supposed to be some way. Maybe you feel good. Maybe you are in a lot of pain. Maybe you're feeling a lot of grief. Maybe you're peaceful or anxious or angry or grateful. Mm-hmm. See if you can just receive whatever is happening. So there's the body and whatever sensations are present. And then take a moment and see how the mind is. A lot of thoughts, not a lot of thoughts. You know, what kind of thoughts? Again, no right or wrong. Just being aware. Okay, this is the mental activity that's happening now. Thoughts about the past or thoughts about the future. Thoughts about some better alternate present. These emotions, whatever emotions are here now. And then in the middle of all that, if you haven't already, find the breath. You don't have to get rid of the thoughts or the sensations or any of that stuff. You just let everything be exactly as it is. So for the purpose of this practice, we just let the breath, this experience of breathing, come into the foreground and let the other stuff kind of go into the background a bit. And the other things will just do what they're doing. They'll come and they'll go, and we don't have to concern ourselves with that. And we get to get a little space from all of it by just staying with the breath. Not pushing things away, but just using the breath as a kind of stabilizer, as a kind of home base. Giving up the idea that anything's wrong or should somehow be otherwise. But just giving whatever experience is here, just giving it some space. Notice if you're at odds with anything inside yourself. If there's some part of the experience that you're rejecting or resisting, see if you can soften that a little bit. See if you can at least allow whatever's present to be here. resting in awareness. Coming back to the breath. How was that? Any questions or comments about the practice specifically?
So recently I've been experiencing a really intense, like, chest burning and anxiety sensation.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I sit and all the other time as well. And it's really hard to be with. I was wondering if you had any advice.
So you're experiencing a lot of, like like almost a burning kind of feeling?
Yeah, like, you know, just in general for like really uncomfortable physical sensations,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, for starters, notice how you're relating to the sensation. So like when you feel it, sorry, let me just adjust this. When you feel it, do you kind of hate it?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is part of what happens is there's like some, discomfort, and then we hate it. We don't like it. We want to get rid of it. And so, but through that rejection, we actually cause more tension, right? I mean, especially with anxiety, it's really easy to get anxious about being anxious. And it becomes this like self-fulfilling thing where, the more anxious I get, the more anxious I get. When you shift it and actually allow yourself to be with it with some kindness and some compassion, it seems counterintuitive, but what happens is then you, the person who is experiencing that, actually shift into a state of acceptance and a kind of loving kindness state, which then actually relaxes you, actually shifts your whole biochemistry essentially, and will alter the experience. But it's one of those paradoxical things where the resolution is in the acceptance. So like, if you do what I just said as a way to get rid of that feeling, it's not going to work. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because at its core, it's still, you're still kind of like headbutting the experience you're having. And that's going to hurt. And physiologically, that orientation where it's me against this thing is inherently, it's part of the like fight-flight thing. It's like the sympathetic arousal. So it's a kind of aggression, essentially. I mean, to put it kind of broadly. And so it's activating to your system. So the tension's only going to increase. But you're struggling with anxiety specifically, or it's yeah. If you come up afterwards, we could talk a little bit. I mean, because what it is, and I mean, I'd like to ask you more questions. It's not, everyone else may not want to just be part of that conversation. But yeah, please come up afterwards. Anybody else?
I was just curious. I've been doing this for a while, but sometimes, like when I'm meditating, do I have to focus to meditate? Because like sometimes I get into this thing where I'm in this, I meditate and everything's peaceful, and then I wake up. Not that I'm sleeping, I'm like in the middle of that.
Right. So you get into a peaceful state, and then you kind of snap out of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like I like when you're dreaming, and then you don't think to wake up, but it's like I'm conscious enough to snap out of it. Like,
are you sure you're not just sleeping?
No.
No?
I would never sleep around like a lot of people. I'm like a homeless guy on the bus or something. So I'm not that. I don't know. I mean, I'm used to like exercising. I'm not.
Yeah. No, I feel it. So your question is, do you need to focus when meditating? Is that what you said?
Right.
But what do you mean by focus in that context?
Focus is be aware that I'm aware. yeah, so I get in that peaceful thing to where it's like 0 point energy type of thing to where I don't have to, it's just there.
Great.
And it feels good, but, and you know, because you've been doing this a while and you seem to like, you know, I don't know. I mean, I felt God before and it's a great energy. I mean, like, do you get there with that or, I'm getting confused myself.
Yeah. You know, I think I'd say, you know, it can get complicated, and obviously meditation's a whole art form with lots of, you know, different teachings and different practices. It's really good to just keep it simple and just kind of stick with the breath, you know? And just like, and even, you might be sitting there, and as you're sitting, you're like, wait, should I be focusing? Or wait, is that God energy? Is it not good? Hold on, should I, wait, that guy's been doing it for a long time. But then you're just like, wait, that's all a bunch of thoughts. All of that. All of that. Every one of those is just a thought. And then you just come back to the breath. And there's not a lot of questions with the breath. It's like, there's an in-breath, there's an out-breath. It's just breath. And you can see, you know, the mind gets really tricky and it'll come up with like, no, but this is a real question. Or, no, this, I know, but this is a real thought. This is important. It's not. It's not. I mean, that's how it tricks us, you know? And really, we're just taking a break from all that and just coming back to the breath. Anybody else? Yep.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot with like attachment and identification. This kind of popped up from like this past Friday. You know, I do my morning sit and I got to work. My boss sat me down and I went through like a 3-month interview process. And then like he sat me down, told me, you know, thanks for doing it, but I'm gonna go with your, like my coworker got the role. So immediately my body's just like, what the fuck? And then, like luckily the day before I did a sit where it was like going over the like SANE acronym where it's like stop, allow, investigate, feeling, and then like non-identification. So like after I met with my boss, you know, I went to the conference room, kind of sat for a little bit. And like I stopped, you know, allowed the emotions to come through, gave space for that. You know, I investigated, I could feel my body, my face was like all flustered, my hands were shaking, my heart was beating. But then like the non-identification part, I'm like, what do I do? Like, I can't not identify with this feeling. So it was tough for me to sit through like, shit. Like, I go back to my desk, my coworker who got the role sitting right next to me. Like, oh, like I'm happy for her. I'm telling her like, oh, I'm happy for you. That's fine. And then like my emotions, my body's telling me like, no, this is fucking bullshit. Like, I should be in this role. Like, no, I spent 3 months like projecting what my future self would do with this role, this job, this money. And then, like, I've been sitting a lot over the weekend and just like the non-identification with the emotions and the feelings is just tough right now. But and in the grand scheme of things, you know, I'm going through a lot this past year. You know, and this job's bullshit. And really, you know, I shouldn't even like went for it. And in the larger part of my life, there's a lot going on. But just that emotion of identifying with that situation of what my future self should have been, you know, just hard to kind of detach from that.
Yeah. And they took 3 months to do this interview process?
Yeah,
that is bullshit.
a lot of stages, a lot of like, you know, what would you do in situations? A lot of like projecting my. A
lot of bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, summarizing.
3 months of bullshit.
Yeah.
Of course you feel that way.
Yeah. So like instantly I could feel in my body, just like, oh, like everything in my body was kind of like just turned up like 50 degrees.
I know why you're feeling like this. Because you had your heart set on getting this job and you tried really hard and then you didn't get it and it was really upsetting and disappointing. Yeah. That's how I would feel. Yeah.
Just any suggestions on like non-attachment or non-identification with like emotions or like during the sit? I
mean, you know what we mean by that in this context is just that it's like that reaction is just natural. It's not something you're doing or not doing. You know, like if I really want something and I don't get it, especially after 3 months, I'd feel like it was bullshit, and I'd be angry about it. Now, if you've had the misfortune of practicing a little bit of Buddhism, you might get into this thing where you're like, oh, like as a good Buddhist, I shouldn't be upset, and see, I'm attached, and that's not right. How do I let go of this? And like my face is flustered, and maybe they should know that. They'll see that. So how do I just let go of this and be cool? That's bullshit. That whole bit is bullshit. This practice is not about becoming superhuman. It's about actually accepting our humanity in a really deep way. And not being ashamed of it. You know, I actually think one of the reasons this practice is popular is because it gets kind of sold within American culture as a kind of like, it almost reminds me of what, you know, like in the old days used to be called like success literature, or kind of like, you know, this kind of like, hey, you know, 10 steps to being a better you, or some bullshit like that. But to me, like, and believe me, that's how I signed up. I mean, definitely. But over the years, you start to see that, like, oh, that's the problem. I'm like hooked into this because I think that somehow the way that I am is somehow like wrong and unacceptable and, I don't know, unlovable or unattractive. You know, we get all these crazy ideas, right? And then I'm going to somehow meditate my way to health or some shit. And that's really not it. It's actually, that's like the ego co-opting this practice in just the same exact way. It's just another, that becomes just another way that like we're not okay now, and I got to become some better version of myself in the future. And when I do that, then it'll be better, you know? And that's still like, ultimately, it's still just rejecting the present moment. It's just like in a new, cool, spiritual way. So really, to me, the non-identification is that it's not really about you. It's like, well, yeah, of course you feel that way. Like, sounds like a really fucking frustrating, disappointing experience. So seeing that as not like your fault. Like, see, there's this problem we have where like we take ourselves very personally, I guess is a way to say it. And how we feel, we kind of tend to pathologize it, like, oh, what's wrong with me that I feel this way? Like, nothing, that's just how you feel. Seeing it that way allows you to stay in the present moment. Because then we're not preoccupied with fixing it somehow, right? To actually be here now, you have to at least accept the here and now. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if we don't have that, it's like, how can you be here now if like, you know, you're still in debate about whether this is even happening or whether it should be happening? So, I would invite you to have some compassion for yourself and just your basic fundamental humanity. I can't imagine someone not feeling that way. After like a 3-month interview process, and then your coworker gets it, you know what I mean? It's like, you're a lot. Now, you don't need to act it out, right? Like, that's actually something else I want to mention. There's a real distinction between feeling what you're feeling and being with the experience and acting it out. You know, like, it's one thing to be frustrated, and it's another thing to punch somebody in the face. But I'll tell you, though, what's interesting about the acting it out is very proportionate to how much we can't be with it. You see what I mean? Like, if I'm frustrated and I can't tolerate the frustration, I'm actually going to try to get, like, it's like if I go to punch someone, right? Let's use a better example. If I'm hungry and I go eat, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, basically I'm going to eat because I can't be with the hunger. I'm not advocating you should be with the hunger. I'm just saying that the response is to alleviate whatever feeling I've got going on, right? So to whatever extent I'm comfortable with it and I can just relax into it, then I don't have to then act on it to alleviate it. You see what I mean? Does that answer your question? She wanted to, is there anybody else? Because I wanted to kind of go in a slightly different direction. Yes, okay, go ahead, yeah.
That just brought up something that I was thinking about in relation to when you do have a practice and you meditate regularly, or, yeah, I guess regularly. People could also become more sensitive to what they're feeling, and maybe something could actually be more intense, like even feeling sitting with your pain. I'm asking that as a question. Is that something that you would say happens?
The question being that you get more sensitized and the feeling gets stronger. Is that what you mean?
Like you can be more in touch with the pain that you're having, and
Can I ask you to, are you speaking like hypothetically or from your experience?
I'm speaking from actually hearing a teacher say that to me. I was telling him about feeling something, and he said, well, when you practice regularly, you can actually sort of feel more deeply, and sometimes when you feel more deeply, that can feel more painful.
Sure, no, absolutely. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's, I wouldn't even say maybe is not even a part of it. That's how it works. But you want to, with it, hopefully as you're practicing, the compassion is arising proportionately. So it's yes, you're feeling more, but you're holding it with more kindness and compassion. So as it increases, your capacity increases, and actually your capacity to just tolerate it, or at least allow it, is growing as well. You know, the real question is sort of at what point is it overwhelming? And that's a personal thing. Like for some people, they might get overwhelmed very easily. So it's not even that they're feeling that much, but that's the part that matters. That's the real optimal question, is at what point are we getting overwhelmed? Which is rather than the like some measurable amount. You see what I mean? It's personal to each person's capacity. Danny, do you have your hand up?
Oh, well, I mean, would you call it self-planning instead of mansplaining, do you think?
Sure. I mean, I think I like the term mansplaining a lot. I think like when I first saw that, when I first read it, I was like, oh shit. I mean, I mansplain for a living, right? I mean, but I think of, I mean, and please tell me if anyone wants to correct my understanding of it. My sense of what mansplaining really is it's a kind of explaining or talking where you're not really listening. It's not a two-way thing. It's just like, I'm going to tell you, and I don't actually care what you already know or don't know, or it's not like I'm just telling you. And I noticed that internally, both with men and women, like I have a lot of clients of, you know, both men and women, that internal relationship can be like that a lot of times. Where we're not listening, I mean, I was just making a joke out of it, but where we're not really receiving the experience as much as we're telling ourselves how it should be and what it means, and this is, you know what I mean? And I heard someone said something like, what was it recently? It was a nice quote. They said something like, information, they said something like knowledge, I forget if it was information or knowledge, is about talking, and wisdom is about listening. And I thought that was a nice, kind of caught the essence of that.
So kind of in that same vein, when our mind is, you should be doing this, in this particular process, it's just finding a better way to listen to that story instead of acting on it, right?
I actually meant more like listening to the experience in the body. You know? It's when we don't, you know, there's a real beauty into not knowing. Like when you don't know, like if we're going to talk and I really genuinely don't know what you're going to say, I'm gonna listen, right? Because I don't know, like I'm open. Whereas when we already know, or at least we think we already know, it's like there's no room for anything, because it's like, well, it's already filled. It's like all the space is already filled with all the stuff I think I know. So I can't really perceive wisely, because it's like, oh, I already know that. Oh, that thing, oh yeah, I hate that thing. You know? I wanted to say one other thing is, or I want to kind of get on to a slightly different thing. I want to make a little announcement, which is tonight's actually my last night for a while, because I'm going to go live in New York for a few months. And so I just wanted to say that. And I will hopefully, I'm going to be gone for about 3 to 4 months. I'm hoping to come back for a visit somewhere in the middle, like for maybe in March. And maybe I can come for like a week so I could do 2 Mondays back to back. But until then, I just wanted to say, I just want to let you know, because you might notice I'm not around. And, obviously Matthew will keep doing it, and there's a bunch of other teachers that are great teachers that are stepping in, I talk to people privately sometimes, or do sessions with people. If anyone's ever interested in that, I'm still seeing people on Skype. So if that's something anyone's interested in, you can get a hold of me, I guess either through Facebook or get my email through Jason. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm going. I'm excited about going. I got a lot of reasons, but it's also sad too. I love this community, and I've been part of it for 12 years, something like that. Some insanely long time. If I didn't have a lot of meditation experience when I started, I'd do now, just over those 12 years. Yeah, I don't know, there's something sweet about it and kind of bittersweet about it. But it's great. I love teaching here, and I love seeing all of you. And, I should be back in May, probably around May. It's kind of awkward to do that in the middle of the talk, because now it feels like we're sort of done. We actually got another half hour, so I just wanted to get that off my chest. What I also wanted to just, what I was talking about, I wanted to bring up this topic that sort of arose during the meditation, which is, at one point I said something like, notice if you're resisting anything or kind of at odds with anything. And it kind of relates to your question in the beginning, right? It's like, one of the classic metta phrases, if you ever do the metta practice, we don't use it as much now, but if you read in the suttas, one of them is, "May I be free from enmity." Am I saying it right? Enmity. And enmity means to make an enemy out of something, to relate to something like it's an enemy. And I actually think that's a very important question, a very important dynamic to look at, of how we make enemies out of, not just others, which are also very important to look at, but I think actually even making enemies out of others starts with, it's just a practice where you're making enemies, that's just how we relate. It's like, well, I don't like this and that, that's bad and wrong, and that's bad and wrong, and these are the things that are bad and wrong about me, and this experience, this feeling in my chest, this thought, that thought, like I was upset, like this way we have of often like defining ourselves by what we don't like. Like I know who I am by what I hate. Including about myself, first and foremost about myself. I was actually watching myself recently, and I kind of had this time of realizing, like, that, like I do a lot of criticizing. Like I'll talk about, oh, this is fucked up and that's fucked up, and it's in very, like, I like to think it's in very articulate, intelligent, kind of well-formed statements. But I was looking at that, I was like, yeah, you know, it's still kind of just complaining, though, isn't it? Like, it's a very sophisticated form of complaining, but it's just complaining, kind of. And I was talking to some other teachers about this, and I was really starting to just investigate how, you know, there's actually different brain centers for this, but there's the kind of what we call, you know, a lot of our education comes from this, is like what we call critical thinking. And there's a whole physiology that's part of this, is the orientation that basically takes things apart. And it breaks things down, and it like criticizes them. I mean like thinks critically, right? And it definitely has its place. I'm not saying it's all bad and wrong. Because I'm kind of complaining about this now, aren't I? But we want to really exercise this other side of us too, which is the other part of us that actually puts things together. That instead of taking it apart, actually puts things together. It actually sees the commonality. Right? Critical thinking is about kind of discerning the difference. And this other part is about actually seeing the commonality. And when we meditate, you know how they're doing all this like brain studies on meditators. And I remember the abbot of the monastery where I was, he said, you know, we could have told them this thousands of years ago. But the meditation's is about cultivating that unifying part of the brain, right? Ultimately, which then allows you to eventually, you know, cultivate it enough where you really do have the perception that everything is one. You see the interdependence between everything. What we crave so deeply and long for so deeply, things like love and things like peace and well-being, those exist in that unifying orientation. You can't criticize your way to happiness, by definition. You see what I mean? Because even if you're like, no, I'm going to keep problem solving, it's like, I know, but you're never going to get to a point where you're like, aha, there it is. That's the last problem. Furthermore, like, you're actually getting better and better at finding problems. Like, that's actually what you're practicing. And so there's no end to it, right? Even in a very ideal kind of setting, your brain's still like, oh, but that one little thing and that. On the other side, we have things like forgiveness, acceptance, embracing, allowing. This is where kindness lives. This is where tolerance lives. This is where empathy lives. And we develop that by practicing it. We develop that right now. Like, I was talking to someone earlier, and he was being very critical of himself that he didn't have enough acceptance. He was like, I just fucking don't have any empathy, and what's wrong with me? And it was deep, because I was like, dude, he's like, no, I really got to work this out. And I was like, man, you could start right now. Like right now. And it was interesting because his whole thing was like, he wanted to work. He actually wanted to work with me because he wanted to get over all these issues so he could become more loving. And I said, well, why don't we just start now? Like, can you just love this now? And it was really deep to see how the critical mechanism was just, you know, it was going and going and going. And even something like Buddhism and empathy and love and accept all these beautiful things were still being fed through that critical machine, right? I find actually some of the most brutal self-criticism is spiritual self-criticism. Like if you get on this path, and I find this path, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, I mean, tell me if your experience is different, it kind of has this arc where you start and you got beginner's mind. In the beginning, it's awesome. It's just so good. You have no expectations. It's all like, it's kind of a fluke you even showed up. Your friend told you to come, and you meditated, and holy shit, kind of felt like you were on acid. And like, and it was great, and like, holy shit, oh, I love this is good. And for a while, it's super sweet. Some of you may be there now. You might want to just plug up your ears for this next Then comes this like really brutal middle phase that lasts a really long time. Where now it's like an occupational hazard, because now you've got this identity. You're like a Buddhist, and you're like this spiritual person, and you know, you got to be really nice and unattached and all these things. But then, like, it's not really working, and then all the things that you hate about yourself are still there. And you thought they were getting better for a while, but like they're back. And so you're gonna try harder. You know, you're gonna practice harder. And then you do that for a while. And then there's this beautiful phase where you give up. You're like, wow, I'm fucked. Like, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, it never really works in the end. And fuck this. And then, but you keep practicing, I mean, you keep showing up. And then you're actually ready for this beautiful thing to just be with yourself as you are. To just like, oh, this is me, this is who I've always been, except I had all these ideas that I was doing it all wrong, and I was going to change all of it through my rigorous Buddhist practice. But I was actually kind of being a dick. I was actually, you know what I mean? Like I was just attacking myself with this new, like, this kind of like 2.0 criticism. And that's just a very painful phase. And if I can shorten that for any of you, I would be very happy about that. Because you don't need it really. I mean, you actually, this is what's weird, you do need it. You actually do kind of need to fail in a way. But you can also just start loving yourself right now. Like I mean right now. Not like once you fix whatever you were going to fix, but right now. And that's just about accepting that, hey, this is how it is. This is how you are. This is how all of us are. And it's okay. And actually in doing that, you're activating this other part of the brain. You're activating this unifying part of consciousness rather than the critical one. And the critical one is so powerful that it will actually fight this. Like, I can hear half of your brains fighting this right now. Where it goes, no, but I gotta, no. And it's like, because it's just gotta keep saying no. It just wants to keep saying no because that's how it asserts itself. That's how the ego structure asserts itself. It asserts itself and kind of exists through conflict. Like if there's no conflict, there's no narrative. You see what I mean? And so even, it's like, well, you know, you can go, well, okay, I get it. It's about acceptance. and they'll criticize, like, well, how well are you you're not accepting as well as you could be, right? So it's like, great, I get to criticize again. The practice of acceptance, this practice that actually unifies, that forgives, that's a really powerful practice. It's altering your brain chemistry on a very deep level. It literally shifts your, if you know about the nervous system, it's what takes you from the sympathetic to parasympathetic, or the activation to deactivation. If you've ever experienced peace, even briefly, you may have noticed that during those times, it's not that finally everything was to your liking. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like, there, I just got everything I wanted, it's perfect, now I feel at peace. It doesn't really work like that. If you notice in those moments, everything is still kind of how it is, but somehow you're just more okay with it. You know, have you noticed that? It's not that, like, you know how our moods change pretty radically, but like circumstances don't necessarily change that radically? It's a really beautiful practice that's very good for you, actually. And it's good for everybody around you. And I feel 100% confident saying that our world wouldn't be in some of the dire places that it is if more people were practicing that. Because in the end, all these external expressions all come from the inside. It's all a manifestation of how people feel ultimately inside. And there's so much animosity inside that, of course, that begets all this animosity on the outside. What I also find is that it's also, that critical thing is a kind of defense. It's a way to defend oneself against, I mean, in a way it's like against heartbreak, really. Because I find that the more I let myself love directly and embrace and just allow, the more vulnerable it is. You know? Because you actually then, you start loving people and things, and you start to care, and you have empathy. But it actually then opens us up to loss. Right? Like if I actually care about, you know, whoever or whatever, I can lose that as well. So there's a vulnerability in there. And this is where the compassion becomes so important, because if we don't have compassion for that vulnerability, then the other response is to harden. And Buddhism can be a great way to harden, actually. I mean, it's a misunderstanding, a very profound one. But this practice can be very easily co-opted and used as a way to harden. And be like, well, I'm unattached, and whatever, everything's everything, and and that's not the intention. That's not the way the Buddha meant it. There's actually a beautiful sutta. Let's say this briefly. If you end up studying the suttas, in the story, the Buddha actually had his two chief disciples. They called them like the right and the left hand of the Buddha. And it was Sariputta and Mahamoggallana. There's two characters in the story, and they're great. They're like they also give teachings, and you can read their suttas, and I love their whole story, but they both die. They both die before the Buddha. And after first one dies, then the other one, and then and it's very poetic. The Buddha says in this one sutta, he says, "It's like the sun and the moon have set on the Dharma." And what I always found very moving about that is when you read it, you can feel and hear that he's sad. You know, that he's grieving. He's sad that these two very close friends have died. And I was struck that he didn't say, "Oh, well, whatever, I wasn't attached anyways." "Oh, are they dead? Oh, well, you know." So it's not, so that's not what it's about. You know, this isn't actually a practice for, you know, transcending your humanity. It's about, in many ways I would say, it's actually about embracing it on such a deep level that you then have profound wisdom about it. That by understanding our humanity deeply, we can act and live in accordance with it. Because what we mostly have is a humanity that's misunderstood and rejected and, you know, is sort of all tied up in knots, in a sense. And so then the way we act and the way we interact and just how we take care of ourselves or others, it's often very misguided. And in that misguidance is a kind of rejection of our humanity. So by seeing our humanity, experiencing it, and embracing it, we, as you know, when they say when the Buddha was enlightened, he saw reality as it really was. So we can see ourselves the way we really are. Not how we think we should be, not how someone told us we should be, but actually exactly who we are right here, right now. Not someday, not a long time ago, but right here, right now. This is it, right here. And we can allow that vulnerability and allow this deep heartness. I guess heartfulness would be the word, wouldn't it be? And just at any moment, it's just, you know, it's like, it's just this leaning in towards kindness. You know, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just, at any given moment, you can just say, hey, what would be kind right now? Whether it's towards yourself, someone else, like, it doesn't have to be some grandiose thing. It's just, what would be kind? I remember seeing a quote from the Dalai Lama where he actually says something like, he says, my religion is kindness. You know, someone I think was asking about Buddhism and all that. He's like, really, my religion is just kindness. Because within kindness, it's all in there. You have all of it. You see what I mean? Because if you can be kind, then you don't see, by definition, you don't see yourself as being totally separate. Right? If you have kindness, then you by definition, have a kind of presence in the here and now. You have compassion, and you have non-harming, which is, you know, one of the pillars of this practice. And it's not complicated. It doesn't, it doesn't take some huge thing. It's just right now. What would be kind? From the smallest thing to the biggest. And it's no accident. I think pretty much every religion, every school, every spiritual teaching since the dawn of time lands on this. Like, I can't think of one that doesn't. I think, doesn't Aldous Huxley have a thing where at the end of his life he says something like, it's kind of embarrassing, if anybody knows the actual quote, he says it's sort of like embarrassing after all this stuff I've done, after all this exploration, like I don't have much more to say than just try to be kind to each other, or something like that. Might be getting it confused with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. For all of you who are in your 40s. But that was be excellent to each other, right? It means the same thing. I guess that's a good note to end it on, huh? Just got a couple of minutes. You got announcements?
Sure, I can do a couple quick ones. Couple of big events coming. Yes, sir. We've got the Year to Live starting with Vinny at the end of this month. If you have questions, it's kind of hard to explain in a real short note, but it's a 13-month class. We meet once a month for 3 hours on a Saturday each month. It's based on Stephen Levine's book, A Year to Live. Basically living as if you've been given a diagnosis that you have 1 year to live. That'll be starting at the end of the month. If you go on the website, you're welcome to register for that. If you have questions, let me know. In the beginning of March, we're having a weekend non-residential retreat here. It's going to be combining 2 different practices. Chandra Easton is one teacher. She's going to be doing Feed Your Demon practice, which she does here frequently on Wednesdays. And Noah Levine will be basically doing a refuge recovery, half of that. So it's combining 2 different things. That's the beginning of March. And then the beginning of April, we are having a Sangha camping trip. And basically come talk to me, because I put the cost of the group site on my credit card. So I need to get reimbursed as I'm signing people up. And then whatever goes beyond what I paid will go to ATS. And then the last thing is just, to be just really honest, we've gone over the year's budget of the last year and what we brought in and what our expenses were. And we were had a shortfall, about $40,000. So we're the largest center of all the Against the Stream centers. We have the most people here, but we bring in the least money. So we really just kind of, all of us, Gene, Matthew, Vinny, none of us like asking for money, and it shows. Down in LA, Noah's great at asking for money, and they do better. So we just really need all the help we can get to keep the doors open. So, thanks.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm glad you said it. Yeah, it's been a thing. We've always, it shows, doesn't it? So thank you. That was nice and vulnerable. Appreciate that. All right. It's funny. I definitely feel some sadness to wrap it up, because I won't see you guys for quite a while. But thank you. I really. This community definitely means a lot to me. I really appreciate, and really, it's an honor to get to sit up here to share something that I love deeply and has, was very generously shared with me by my teachers. Well, it's really nice to pass it on. And if I can save you any amount of time in that really shitty middle stage, I would like to do that. Okay, so just to wrap it up, bring your awareness back to your body. And just see what it would be like to be kind with whatever you're feeling right now. However it is right now. What would it be to just lean into the direction of kindness? May the merit generated by us coming together like this, as a community, as a sangha, to support each other's practice, support each other's awakening, and to support each other in finding our way to kindness and forgiveness. We dedicate and share this merit with beings everywhere. May we all be free. Thank you.